Acceptance is a simple word. There are other words in our language that have more syllables than it. And it can mean something as straightforward as saying, I accept that as my partner, every time you organize the cutlery in the cutlery drawer, you're going to drive me crazy. But usually it means something more profound, and it asks us to bring to ground all of our best ideas and ideals in everyday life. It is a challenge to us in some way, and that's not easily dealt with, in the sense that, on one hand, acceptance can comfort and reassure us, but it can also provoke us. It can disturb us sometimes. It can bewilder us. But maybe in its best moments, it asks us to transcend all the divisive influences in everyday life. The things that actually alienate us perhaps from each other in one way or another, our resentment or our envy or our social conflicts or the varieties of competitiveness that we actually experience. As, for example, might have been the case in Peterborough recently, when people from that city came forward after the firebombing of the local mosque and said, we will offer you our time, we will offer you our effort, we will offer you our physical labor, we will give you money. But what we really are doing is declaring the ethic of community. And as I suppose what was also declared and shown in Paris over the past 2 weeks, when Parisians have revolted, so to speak, against a certain kind of action and violence committed against them. When Parisians gather by the thousands, silently, standing in commemoration of lives lost, what do they know of each other? When they gather together by the thousands, silently, holding hands, hugging each other, before displays of candles and flowers, what exactly do they know about each other? And when in fact they gather together again by the thousands throughout the city, to listen to performances of music, to reassure them and to create that bonding experience with each other, what exactly do they know about each other? Do they know whether any of the people around them have religious beliefs? And if so, what are those? Do they know their politics? Do they understand what their ambitions are? Do they know anything at all about them, other than the fact that they are citizens of Paris and they stand together? Some events stagger us, and in that staggering sometimes, we are forced to distill down to a single criterion the one thing that we believe is so significant that if we were to lose it, we might still breathe, but we would not flourish. And that, I think, is some of the most essential value of acceptance and part of its challenge. Now, my talk today actually is going to look at things quite differently in a sense than what I would ordinarily do. Because all the work I've done and the documentaries I've completed have always looked at the individual. I want to know how people think. I want to know what they believe. I want to know in what ways they take those beliefs and they bring them into their daily lives. I want to know if there are dilemmas that they must choose from and what kinds of decisions they make. Are they dissenters in their society? Do they have a critique? And in some ways, what does that mean for them? And I will tell you that in all the countries, and I've been to a number of them, but in all the countries that I have interviewed people, I think I can say that the most eloquent articulation of acceptance is interpersonal. And yet, having said that, I want to look at something different. I want to take a look at what makes us receptive. I want to look at social conditions. Because the social conditions in which we live, the cultures and the societies in which we reside, are the things that command us to be appealed to and to respond to certain kinds of grand ideals versus others. And this relates to the best and the worst of acceptance. Exactly what makes us receptive. I could check off a list of all the best things to do and the best things to be, and yet I might still be receptive to some of those uneasy thoughts that would draw me away from other people. Some social conditions are benedictions. They bless their populations, and they bless them with gentleness, and they bless them with flexibility. which means that those people can actually go beyond the experience of merely coexisting with each other and forming the deepest kinds of social bonds one can imagine. I think even in that little video we just watched, there's that affirmation of what it means to have relationship with other people. There is no substitute for knowing each other. There is no substitute for learning about each other. And I'm not, by the way, speaking about agreeing. I think we sometimes think that if we accept, we lose, or we give up the right to disagree with people. I have never accepted that. I think that's wrong. I come from a very close, loving family, let me tell you. We disagree all the time, okay? But we love each other. And I think that the same is true in so many other ways. So I'm speaking about the ways in which we find out why we think the way we do and what is important to us. Some people may actually appall us and still fascinate and intrigue us, and it's probing that fascination and intrigue that is really important. And also in those places that bless us, we are able to maybe behave exceptionally. We surprise ourselves. Maybe we surprise other people. We just don't do what we think we would ordinarily do. Maybe even among that population of people in Peterborough who actually responded so well to the members of this mosque, maybe among that population, one person would never have imagined doing anything for a Muslim anywhere on this planet, and then hears about the firebombing of the mosque and says, I think a different kind of behavior is required here, and I think I have to do something differently. And that, however far it goes, is one seed of becoming receptive to a different kind of message. Other societies, other social conditions have a very different message. They don't necessarily bless us. Instead, they call on us to display expressions of sheer brutality and malice. And knowing the difference between those two things, how we can differentiate between one or the other, becomes significant to the idea of any kind of acceptance I can think of. If I had been in Rwanda 20-odd years ago, what would I have observed? Ordinarily, we think that if we bond with each other, if we associate with each other, if we have social relationships with each other, if we experience the most celebratory moments of our lives with each other, those are the things that actually connect us to each other. And those are the foundations and the fundamentals of loyalty and protection and knowledge of each other. But if I were in Rwanda, I would have observed people dismembering friends and relatives destroying other family members. I would have been a chronicler of a society unraveling into cannibalism, and I also would have known that under some social conditions, all of us can be made cannibals. So my talk today, and my thought in general, are the different ways we respond to all kinds of messages in life around us. 9 years ago, I had a conversation with a man who was the only member of his extended family to emerge from World War II's concentration camps alive. And we ended up speaking with each other for some time because I was going to be traveling to Europe, and Poland was going to be one of the countries that I was visiting. And he had been born in Poland, and he grew up in Poland, and that was where he was confined in a camp. And he said to me, many times after coming to Canada, I have thought I should go back for a visit. And many times I have said, I cannot go back. And now, given my age, I will never return. Polish society was savagely and virulently anti-Semitic. They detested Jews. And I'm sure, he told me, that when the Germans came and invaded Poland, there were many Poles who hated the Germans but might have been happy at what they were doing to the Jews. See, here he is in this concentration camp. We were desperate and we were starving, he told me. They lived in utter degradation. And outside one of the barbed wire fences, there was a train track. And occasionally, when the train would go by, some workers on the train would throw partly eaten sandwiches over the wire. And this man said, I was enraged by that. That we were nullity in life. We had been reduced to a point where We were not even registerable in the universe, and here are people who are discovering other and even more primitive ways of expressing their contempt for us. And then he changed his mind. I began to realize, he told me, they were helping us. If they had thrown just food over the wire, they might have been accused by the Germans of sympathizing with Jews, of being resistors to Germany, and they would have risked their lives. But this way, they could take a bite or two out of a sandwich, and they could throw it over the wire and give us some food. And he said to me then, I will never go back to Poland. I know what kind of country it was, but I have to say, those people helped us. Some people helped us. Some people behaved differently, and some people behaved exceptionally, and that is another seed of being receptive to a different kind of message of acceptance. Another example that I have to give you is actually a much more personal one. At the age of 7, I developed a very severe dispute with a neighbor across the street. Now, I don't remember the nature of this dispute. I believe I can say confidently it was not about whether or not the Prime Minister of Canada should lower the interest rates to increase investment in business. So I was 7, my neighbor across the street was 6. He was younger, he was larger, and he was stronger than me. Having been beaten up in every playground in suburban Montreal, nobody on this planet senses imminent defeat better than I. And so I thought, I have this dispute, and I'm going to resolve it. Fighting is just a lost cause. So I searched around for some advantage, and I seized on the one thing that came to mind. We lived in a relatively new development in Montreal. People were beginning to develop their homes. My house, my family's home, had a garage door and a driveway and a light fixture above the door. Across the street was his family's home. They had a garage, they had a driveway, and where there was a light fixture, there was none. There was a hole in the wall, there were wires protruding from it, and I thought, yes! I launched at him my accusation that his family was economically deficient compared to mine. And I got the desired result. I was very happy. I remember, I was so happy. But here's the point. At the age of 7, I understood the symbolic value of a light fixture as a weapon of retaliation and humiliation, and as an instrument that I could use to hurt another person's feelings. If I had never mentioned the light fixture to him whatsoever, still in my young, unarticulated mind, there would have been this idea and this understanding of the power of social class. That's receptivity. That's a response to a social message. I'm not going to use examples now, but I am going to assign, so to speak, a profile to you. I'm making it all up, and you all share in this single identity. You are a Canadian alive in the year 1900. You are dedicated, you are conscientious, you have a social conscience, you are literate, you are interested in the improvement of your own life and of the life of your country, and you are utterly without prejudice, completely without prejudice. And over a period of a few weeks, you begin reading of a policy that had actually been in practice in Canada for some time, but now there was a proposal to expand it everywhere across the country, and that was to take Indian children, as they would have been referred to in the day, Indian children, remove them from the plight of their own environment, and bring them into a possibility of sharing in proper, good, uplifting society. But that required that they be removed from their own societies by whatever means necessary and put into special schools and taught using whatever approaches were needed. And you, with ample goodwill, you support that policy. You are caught up in the tempo of your time. You are perched on the crest of a wave of civilization. Who would not be impressed by that kind of feeling? To think that you are not just the singular actor in this, but that you are the spine of civilization. And in your mind, that wave that you're on is the Anvil of Progress. You are civilized, you are progressive, and you are committed to the best and most uplifting kinds of activity imaginable. And I will suggest to you that in that kind of idea lie the greatest challenges of accepting anyone or anything. What is most important about receptive is our ability to evaluate the circumstances under which we live and not just our own particular attitudes. I will tell you, I think, that the darkness of dark thoughts is not ordinarily that we are hateful. I know that some people are. But I don't think it's always that we are filled with hatred. I think it is, in fact, something a little bit different. It is the understanding that we are best and indispensable. Hate is the necessary element we invent to distract ourselves from knowing when we surrender to the games of society that command us to be closed-minded and malicious. And it is, again, in thinking about that malice and in thinking about that hatred that we may wonder, where lies the defense? I will suggest to you that what we need is a kind of cultural intelligence to prevent those dark thoughts from sliding into darker norms. We need a cultural intelligence that teaches us the merit and the value of being blessed by the social conditions in which we live. We need cultural intelligence that will teach us how to differentiate between a blessing and a malignancy. And we need cultural intelligence to provide us with the insight and the wisdom to know the difference between a blessing and to know that malice is not intelligence. Thank you.